Why are people insisting on this story that Dragon Ball Daima will replace Dragon Ball Super? Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all well. I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon who talks about Dragon Ball the most on YouTube, and you're on my channel. Many people, including content creators, are claiming that Dragon Ball Daima will make Dragon Ball Super no longer canon, just like what happened with Dragon Ball GT. And these arguments are mainly based on Daima's plot holes in relation to Super, and that people supposedly didn't like Dragon Ball Super to the point that it wasn't successful. Let's talk a little about that and why I think it's almost impossible to happen. I always see a lot of people talking on the internet that Dragon Ball Daima would be ignoring the events of Dragon Ball Super, and that's not exactly what's happening. Since the Super phase takes place chronologically after Daima, what happens is that Dragon Ball Daima has a lot of plot holes in relation to Super, and this is supposedly an indication that Dragon Ball Super will be removed from canon. But the Monio, what plot holes are these? Dragon Ball Daima takes place chronologically between Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, but precisely between the Majin Buu saga and the Battle of Gods movie, so Bills and Whis have not yet been introduced into the story, and the plot holes begin when Supreme Kai and Kibito are shown, already separated from the fusion. We know that in the Majin Buu saga they merge and become a single being, and in the Battle of Gods movie, which takes place later, they still appear fused, which creates a chronological error. When Goku asks how they managed to separate, Supreme Kai explains to Goku that Majin Buu probably has some component that undoes the fusion, since in the Buu saga, Goku and Vegeta were fused with the Pod-era earrings, and then separated after being absolved by Majin Buu, and Supreme Kai completes the explanation by saying that he asked Majin Buu to absolve them and then expel them from his body, and that this caused their fusion to be undone, in the same way that happened with Goku and Vegeta. Well, besides being a plot hole in the chronological plot, this entire explanation is a plot hole, since in Dragon Ball Super, when Supreme Kai and Kibito separate, and Goku asks how that happened, it is said that the fusion was undone through a wish they made to Porunga, which seems much more reasonable and simple to me than asking Majin Buu to absolve them. But this creates another plot hole, since in Dragon Ball Super, in the Goku Black Saga, Goku asks the Supreme Kai of Universe 10, Gaosu, how he managed to separate from the fusion, since he was told that the fusion would be permanent, and Gaosu explains that the fusion of the Pod-era earrings is only permanent if it is done with Supreme Kais, and if they are any other beings, the fusion only lasts half an hour, and that was why Goku and Vegeta separated, and not because of the gas generated by Majin Buu's body. All these differences have led many people to argue that Dragon Ball will simply ignore Super, because otherwise Akira Toriyama himself wouldn't write a script that contradicts what would already be canon. But is that true? And I say no, because if we follow this logic, Dragon Ball Z would also cease to be canon, since Dragon Ball Daima ignores things that have already been established as canon. For example, in the Cell Saga, Shenlong says that he can't turn androids 17 and 18 into humans, since the android's powers exceeded his, but in Daima, he managed to turn android 18 into a child without any problems. People are also ignoring the fact that all the Super Phase films, which are part of the story, also had their scripts written by Akira Toriyama, in addition to the entire Super Phase manga, which has his participation along with Toyotaro. It is also important to remember that although Akira Toriyama is indisputably a genius, even he is not exempt from making mistakes. Dragon Ball has had some mistakes over the years, and a good example of this is Den, since in Dragon Ball Z it is established by Akira that Piccolo's race, the Namekians, grow up extremely quickly. Let's remember that Piccolo was 4 years old when he appeared in the story, in the first tournament he participated in, but he was already an adult. But Akira simply forgot this rule with Den, and he is growing at the speed of a human. Another thing we must take into consideration is that Dragon Ball Daima, whether it is canon or not, whether its story makes sense or not, was not made to replace Super, since it is a complementary story. Proof of this is the Dragon Ball Super manga, which is still ongoing, and despite having gone on hiatus with the death of Akira Toriyama, it has not been cancelled, and is already scheduled to return in 2025. So it would make no sense to continue releasing a successful manga that already has a lot of history, and another product that completely ignores this manga, keeping both being released. Most people who say that Dragon Ball Daima will replace the entire Super phase are usually the same ones who have not watched Dragon Ball Super, but still say that it was bad and that it is not successful, all based on other people's opinions. And don't get me wrong, you can have whatever opinion you want about Dragon Ball Super, But to say that it's not successful, I honestly believe that only people who haven't watched the anime and seen how successful it was would say that. Like the episode that introduced Ultra Instinct, which broke the internet at the time, and in the last episode, cities in several countries let their workers off early just to be able to watch the episode, or held events broadcasting the episode live. And I don't even need to say that people who haven't watched it also don't read the manga, which has had some very good sagas like Moro and Granola. But what about you? Do you also think that it doesn't make sense for Dragon Ball Daima to replace Dragon Ball Super? Tell me in the comments, and if you liked the video, subscribe to see the next content. Until next time my people, demonic hugs.